Thank you. Thank you, friends. It's good to welcome you. Here we are, day 5 of the Love and Justice Gathering, and you are all welcome for the keynote address of this gathering that is being facilitated by the Church and Mission Unit of the United Church of Canada. Just in case we have not yet met, my name is Japhet Ndlovu, and I serve as the Executive Minister for the Church and Mission Unit of the General Council of the United Church of Canada. For those who have been here for the last 4 days, thank you for staying the course. I see friends connecting as far as Korea. You are so welcome. You're so welcome. It's another time of the day in that part of the world. Wherever you are connecting from, welcome, welcome. For those joining us today, we are glad that you could make it for this time. Let us begin with a land acknowledgement before I introduce the speaker for the day. I'm connecting to you from Etobicoke in Toronto, and in the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and truth, I recognize and honor that this land is part of Treaty 13. Please honor and recognize through the chart the land where you are connecting from today. I would like to acknowledge that this is part of the traditional territory of the indigenous people across Turtle Island. We thank them for allowing us to meet and learn and have life on their territories. This land where I am located is the territory of the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River. The territory was the subject of the dish with one spoon, one pun belt covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Confederacy of the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. To all that was here for thousands of years before us across Turtle Island, we honor the struggles and the lives of those who gave themselves for it. For those here today, we acknowledge the ancestors beneath our feet, an infinity to each other and to this land. As a migrant myself from Africa, a continent which is a survivor of colonialism, apartheid, and slavery, I acknowledge and pay my respects to all the indigenous nations and their ancestors. Friends, we do have a chaplain in the house and chapel services happening during these gatherings. And in case you do need to talk to a chaplain, please do not hesitate to contact the Reverend Rob Daglish, and you can contact him via Hoover. And Carla does have books for marketing for today that are specific to our theme of the day. Hi, Carla.
Hi there. So the 2 books that are recommended by UCRD for today are Fishing Tips by Reverend Dr. John Pentland and Thriving Churches by Lorraine Shepherd. And of course, using Engage as a coupon code, you get 20% off 2 or more books at UCRD.
Thank you. And please remember that if you registered, the previous sessions are all live on Hoover platform. They will stay there for at least 6 months. So go in and watch or rewatch, or you may invite your community of faith or your friends to watch with you and get engaged in conversation. And as earlier reminded, my dear siblings, let us help to keep this conference center a safe space. The keynote address for today is being given by a friend of mine. And so in my previous life, I've actually had several previous lives. And so in one of them, I served as the All Africa Conference of Churches executive staff based in Nairobi in Kenya. And I was mandated to coordinate the 9th General Assembly of the organization. bringing together close to 900 delegates coming from all over the world and all over Africa in particular. I was looking for a liturgist par excellence. I was looking for somebody who would combine art, music, creativity, contextualization, worship, and theology. And I asked around, where can I find such a person who can facilitate the worship during the assembly? And I was introduced to Claudio Carvalhaes. And I got connected to him. And you know, in life, there are people you meet, and right from the first meeting, you click. And that's what happened. We clicked so easily. We became friends instantly. And indeed, Claudio did not disappoint for the worship services that took place in Maputo, in Mozambique, for the 9th General Assembly of the All Africa Conference of Churches. And it was worship combined in French, English, and Portuguese, and occasionally local Mozambican languages. Claudio is an ordained teaching elder in the Presbyterian Church of the United States of America. He is a theologian, he is a liturgist, he is an artist, a native Brazilian, and my brother completed his PhD in liturgy and theology at Union Theological Seminary. What an honor to welcome you, my friend Claudio. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And over to you.
Oh, what a joy, my friends, to be here with you. And to all of you, I want to thank for the invitation to be here with you all at this fantastic gathering that I've been following. Few steps of what you're going through, the United Church of Canada, especially to those who have been in touch with me. Kivan Huang has been such a compassionate, brilliant companion to me. And I want to thank the translators. I just sent them my talk, and I apologize for that, but thank you for translating for us as well. And for me, it's very deeply to have Japhet here, because as he said, yes, it was a way of connecting from the first moment I met him in Maputo, in Mozambique. And it was there where I had one of my deepest and profound experiences of worship. I remember when I was going to the rehearsal at the Council of Churches in Mozambique, and the rehearsal would start at 7 o'clock. They would go until 10 o'clock, and the choir director has died not long ago, right, Japhet? He had a heart attack. Yep. Fantastic, brilliant conductor. And I remember that when the worship would finish, the people didn't finish singing. They kept on singing. Afrika sekeleka utia ukumbeni fuka sekeleka ukumbisa utia ukumbeni. And they were just putting the chairs together on top of the other, and Afrika sekeleka. And then they would keep on cleaning the room, utia ukumbeni. And then they would move into the streets, fuka sekeleka ukumbisa. And they would go into the main avenue where there was an island where all the bus stops were, and they were utia ukumbeni. And I followed them to see, and the singing never ended. And so I went to the corner and I kept looking at them, and they were waiting for the bus, and the choir was all there singing, Africa, step up in faith, because God loves you. Africa sekeleka And then a group of people would come into the first bus, and they went inside of the bus, and the others who stayed at the bus stop. And there was on and on and on. And that's when I learned where we pray without ceasing. That we sing without ceasing. And that conference was a very hard one to deal with. And I remember my brother Japhet having to deal with so much. And he kept his smile. Every morning he would bring the smile to us and put us all together and give us the Spirit of God. And then we were ready for the entire day. So his spirit in 1998 still moves me, still in me. So when I hear his voice, I still remember Maputo and what God has done to us there. So thank you. Such an immense honor to be with my brother Japhet. And so I've been following you and the ways in which you are engaging with so many crucial things in our faith: deep spirituality, daring worship, courageous community, bold discipleship. And today we're going to engage hope. And let me say that I'm speaking from São Paulo, Brazil, where I came to visit my 9-year-old mother, Esther, who's here with me. And I am visiting her here for this 1 week. And we are speaking from the land of the Guaranis, indigenous people who have lived in this area for millennia. And now, because of colonization, they're all elsewhere and on highways and other places of poverty because of what we all did to them. So engaging hope. How should we engage hope, my friends? And hope has been a landmark, right, in so many theological works, pastoral ministry and liturgies. It's the source of our daily discourses, isn't it? So my hope today is to go somewhat the other way around and provoke you by complicating the notion of hope. So if we are to engage it, we must do perhaps in a different key. And so let me start by condemning hope first and see what comes out of it. To talk about hope is to talk essentially about a feeling, right? And I think hope is not the kind of feeling we need for our times. Hope doesn't hold to the challenges we face today. In fact, hope can be a sort of a feeling, or is the feeling that the economic structures of our time is putting forth for us to live. Because the political feeling of our days is fear. And to combat this fear, we need hope. Thus, by engaging hope, we are still caught into a network of fears. But not only now. Hope has been used to cover disasters, destructions, and death under the greed of development, conquer, and mastery. If we look back, hope has been also the gutter of a lot of Christian thought, a drain through which immense forms of human dreams were made disillusionment, abandonment, and forgetfulness. More, hope has been a way of mass maneuvering of unwary hearts for their domination. For so long, hope has been used as a tranquilizer of rebels, turning social changes into mere experiences and expectations. Hope is like the political process where everything is slow to change, right? That's why the art of politics is art of the slow processes. Hope in this slow process of change is a lure in the politics of death that have spread far and wide. According to this form of hope, many times the kind of hope we preach is also for those who can afford hope. Only those who have enough can live in hope. So if I'm hungry today, I cannot wait for a process. I cannot wait for a political structure. So hope is only for those who have their bellies full. They can wait because they do not hunger. So sometimes the notion of hunger, of hope, has been challenged, right? And so there's a song that was very important during the dictatorship here in Brazil, where the singer called us all by saying, "Come, let's go. Waiting is not knowing. Those who know make time. They don't wait for it to happen." We all, perhaps some of us know that the German theologian Jürgen Moltmann has given his life writing his theology of hope. But he has known that hope is not expectation, but act. Already in 1968, he said, if one waits for the love of Christ in the future of God and in the final liberation of the world, this person cannot passively wait for that future and, like apocalyptic believers, withdraw from the world. Instead, he must seek that future, fight for it, and already be there in correspondence with it in the active renewal of life and living conditions, and therefore realize it already here, according to the measure of possibilities. But that is not often the sense of hope that we have carried, but more a passive expectation that has been the engine of colonization and capitalism. The robbery, assault, and killing promoted by the colonizing project, which was fully supported by the church all around the world, and it became one of its main beneficiaries, was in fact a hopeful movement. The hope that a civilizing era would bring the true God to the world and save lost people. We cannot forget that hope is always a political gesture. But what kind of political gesture hope entails? For faith and politics, as we know, always walk together. In describing the atrocities and massacre of the Plains Indians at Sand Creek in 1864 in the United States and the creation of the doctrine of manifest destiny, Miguel de la Torre says, the manifest destiny was only a manifestation of Christian subjugation incarnated as hope. Attempts to explain how such horrors will work for good mock the terror that the victims of Christianity have always faced. Yes, manifest destiny has always been the hope of Christians in Uncle Sam's land to save the world. That's why we see that in all forms of patriotism has embedded in itself the notion of hope. We sing the hope that we as a country have. We have a flag that shows our hope. And while political forms of hope were and still are attached to space and place, of conquering and stealing lands, when we think of our theologies, we have shifted our sense of hope to time, shaping our memories with hopes that comes from the past. For example, when we talk about the history of God's saving acts, it's almost always that saving acts are always marked by time and almost never by space. By universalizing some acts of God's in history, this history is always attentive to time when that happened. But that, when you just focus on time, it creates the conditions for a space never to be thought within our faith. So we only think in terms of time without a space. And that has been a lot of our spirituality. Only recently, Christian churches started to deal with space and then with the natural world, wrestling with the stealing of lands from native people, considering space plays as a fundamental part of the Christian faith. By hiding space and place and working only with time, we could steal everything because the acts of God were still saving us in time. I know the United Church of Canada has done great work already in this area, but there and elsewhere, churches are not yet ready to give their lands back to indigenous people, right? So we have started very tamely the acknowledgement of the stealing, which is important. But a deeper sense of it that we still need to go. And all of this, my friends, is to say how hope has been used to silence process of domination, used as weapons of destructions or simple messages of optimism. Everything is going to be all right. But only people who have means to live can say that. And this is the kind of hope, my friends, that I believe we must get rid of it and walk away from. However, how have we engaged with forms of hope that are only caught in a web of fears and forms of dominance? What does hope mean? Right there, my friends, in your neck of the woods. How is your hope entangled with fears? In your neck of the woods, if you have any woods next to you. Do you have an optimism that says things will be better, that Jesus is coming? And is that enough? Is that even Christian? How have we confused the signs of God's courage with the disasters of human hope? In order to understand what hope is, I think we must attend first to the places with no hope. Only there we can understand hope. Where is hope said, mentioned, lived? For example, how can we speak of hope to or from Black and Indigenous communities who have seen nothing but horrors and devastations since the 1500s and before? Where annihilations and impediments of life has always been a form of being. What do we have to say to Afro-pessimism? The only way for Black folks to survive. So my question here, my affirmation here is this, my friend. Hope is only possible for those who cannot have hope. Again, hope is only present amidst those who cannot have hope. They are the ones who hold true the true markers of hope. Ask immigrants crossing borders and you understand what hope truly means. Ask indigenous people in Alberta, where tar sands, the largest industrial complex project in the world, is destroying sanctuaries untouched for ages and killing local life. Or ask indigenous people in Brazil right now who are seeing the lands destroyed, polluted by miners, forests destroyed by logging, rivers poisoned by companies that comes from Canada, United States, Europe, and China. Ask people in Africa who have been their lands stolen and are now already living the disasters of climate change. Those who have never contributed a single bit of the carbon that is already in the sky. Ask Black people in jail, the new forms of Jim Crow, what hope is all about. Ask Palestinians under the destruction of Israel and ask them, how do they speak of hope? Because it is only possible for those who cannot have hope to understand what hope is all about. And we are coming all to the end of our world, right? Because of climate change. And then we might learn what hope is all about. Indigenous thinker from Australia, Tyson Yunkaporta, says that hope is a destructive force in the universe. Hope is necessary to keep us slaves and speaks to this narcissistic center of ours. The global neoliberal economic system we are living in now is turning us into increasingly selfish beings. We are losing the core of who we are, which is beings that live in solidarity with each other and other living creatures. If we look at the biological composition of our bodies, we will realize that we have trillions of cells in our body that works for the well-being of the entire body. You see, the way our body works is how Ubuntu is conceptualized in Africa. It is only recently that we have turned outward, distant from the inward, and we have become competitors of each other. We are living under governments that foster the idea of the survival of the fittest. Governments and companies are stealing everything from everyone, and we feel lost. The lack of political alternatives is also a marker of the shrinking of our forms of political hope. We were brainwashed to think that success in social life depends on the struggles of the individual. And if one works hard, one can make it. Away from the notion that it takes a village to live, to survive, to learn, that we learned from our African brothers and sisters. But the liberalism of our theologies have helped us also make us think that we are responsible only for ourselves. If any of us, my friends, lose the conditions of having a house or to pay our bills or to live properly in our neighborhoods, all we can do is shrug our heads and say, "You're so sad." We have lost the sense that we are a community of common people where we are responsible for each other and our common sustenance. We have turned into a gathering of individuals with our own rights. Hope has become the ability not to lose our social status. So when we think of our church, it feels like we are mostly hoping that our communities will not die. Now, living with and without COVID, right? We are neither without or with, we have, but we don't have it. I hear pastors saying, we don't know what to do. We are not fully back, but you're not fully online. And the fact that we are dwindling down is putting so many fears around our hearts. And we are struggling to keep ourselves alive. And we are hoping for a glimpse of hope that will tell us everything's going to be okay. But it isn't going to be okay. Because if we go into that cheap sense of hope, which is a cheap sense of grace, all we have left to us is to continue fearing. Besides, in our world today, to be in communities, to be a community is one of the most difficult things to do. Because everything is geared towards the individual. And so our hope becomes only my own project, my own branding, my own story, my own prayers answered, my survival. We are rapidly forgetting to ask questions like God once asked Cain. Where is your brother? Where is your sister? So when we think about our theology and the notion of hope, my friends, we also have to engage with the notion of eschatology, right? Which is the theological discourse about the end of times and the end of the world and the coming of Jesus. We have learned that history is linear, and the culmination of history is marked by the parousia, the coming of Jesus Christ. This understanding of history and life in general has had us all looking to the future in anticipation of the coming of Jesus. Much of it became an abandonment from some Christians of living fully the present and preparing ourselves for the future. The consequence was that it didn't really matter what happens, and it doesn't really matter what happens in this world, because you're going to live with Jesus. It was the expectation of the coming of Jesus that has made us spiritualize everything. And again, stay in time and not in space. Our theology, or most of our theology, has taught us that God is only present in the sacrament and in Jesus, right? Beside that God is not fully present anywhere else. We say that the kingdom of God is here, but not fully here. Is yet to come, is here and not yet. And then we are split into never living fully the kingdom of God, the realm of God, the love of God, fully in the present. Liberation theologists try to tell us that the presence of God is in the poor and in the disfranchised. Ecological theologists have tried to show us that God is also fully present in the natural world. But this is a hard pillow to swallow, isn't it? Because if God is fully in nature, then what happens to the salvific acts of Jesus? Well, I don't want to go there now. But when I stay with the notion of expectation and hopes for the future, what do we expect, my friends, for the future? What are your hopes in regards to yourself, your community, and the world? What are your hopes? What is your theology about what God has to do with the hopes of your heart or your sense of hope? Hope for what? For whom? With whom? Again, how much of our theology of hope is sheer optimism regarding the future? Or is only a response to the fears that mount in our present day lives? And that is, my friend, one of the problems of hope. Hope has become another tool of the masters to control our faith. Because hope doesn't take away our fears. Hope just sometimes keeps the fears there. Because hope and fears, in this sense, it belongs to each other. It feeds one another. The circularity of feelings have entangled us in a web of feelings that have taken us hostage by a faith that is continuously frail and lives in constant fear. So, after having provoked you with that, I want to propose that we move from hope as an inert, shallow concept and even destructive force and move towards courage. Because our world is ending and hope will not do much. As we can see, the climate catastrophes we are living right now are only going to get worse. And our world will end sooner than we imagine. And without a world to live, we can't have faith, communities, each other, life. If we hear that what scientists are saying about the climate catastrophe, we will see that we are in a very scary situation. The freshmen young folks of today, the freshmen, as they call it, at least in the United States, they will live in a world with temperatures higher than 2 Celsius. They will most likely live in poverty. They will live in regions impacted by climate change. They will be alive when the earth reaches a tipping point when runaway climate change is no longer avoidable, and they will be the least responsible for carbon emissions. We are talking about the loss of topsoil all around the world, the earth, the poisoning of the soil, the death of the pollinators, the death of the insects, the acidization and warming of the oceans, all the glaciers disappearing in 15 years, the increase of desertification. Today, we only have 20% of forests standing around the world, toxic air growing, massive storms, wildfires, droughts, floods, famine, growth of immigration and climate change refugees, the loss of clean rivers and clean water, the current 6 massive extinction, and so on and so on and so on. What does our hope have to do with it? Unless we engage into courage to face it all, will be too frail for us to move through the disasters of climate change that are already upon us. Our house is burning. Our faith should be burning as well, so that we engage into hope. I have so many other things, but I wanted to stop soon and then go into conversation. But I want to ask you, and to my, we need to stop everything we're doing right now, my friends, and stop and see the signs of God calling us from the midst of fire and saying, care for the earth. We must change our ways of studying or relating, of worship, of being church, of teaching. And we must move from frail hope to courage to change right now. And I'll finish with this. Perhaps if we change our theology of hope to a theology of courage. Courage to fight governments and industries of destruction. Courage to believe in a small community, in our small communities, and stick to it. Doesn't matter how many we are. The good things that we have a people that want to be together. We don't need budget. We need people who want to be together. If you still have someone who wants to pray with you, you have church. No budgets, no buildings. If you have a collective of people who wants to pray with you, that's church. The courage to believe in that form of church. The courage to engage with our lands and where we live fully. Courage to go to the river next to our houses and care for them. Courage to spend time listening to the birds as God's signs and voices for us. Courage to hug trees as our companions. Courage to see God's fullness, not only in Jesus, but in every living being on earth. Courage to understand that democracy is not only a human endeavor, but a collective action where the seas, the bees, the fish, the moose, the rivers are all agents, are all democratic agents, and they have to have a say in our present and in our future. Courage to talk about God as God love to more than human beings. My friends, we have to stop talking about humans all the time. It's all about us. This faith is all about us. God is all about us. We have to go beyond the human specificism. We are not the only species of the earth. We are not God's crown in God's creation. You're not the crown of God's creation. The fireflies are also God's the crown of God's creation. The moss are the crown of God's creation. The forests, the snow, the river, the trees are the crown of God's creation, along and among with us all. Courage to understand that God didn't want us to rule or dominate the land, but rather to be custodians of the land. Courage to pay attention to the process and movements of nature in everything we do, to listen to the law of the land. See, as a Christians, we know the lex orandi and lex credendi, right? We have the law of prayer and the law of belief. Now we have to switch it to the law of the land. And that should organize our faith and our prayer and our beliefs. Courage not to fear anymore, but to engage the disasters of the world fully, right here, right there. Courage to pay attention to the patch of land you live. Go around your house, pay attention to every vegetable, every vegetation, every fruit, every river, every bird, every tree. Pay attention and make them be your community, your church. Our situation is so dramatic. We have to tell each other stories. I hope that our theologies will be stories about God, humans, but also so many other beings. I hope our stories will be counted by rivers. Our stories will be also will be coming from the stars, from the trees, from the worms, and they will guide us. Because then, my friends, if we do that, we might learn what Franz Kafka, have you read Franz Kafka, the writer? We'll learn about hope in a different way. We learn with what he said. There is a lot of hope, my friends, but not for us. I don't think I have more time. I have way more things and videos to show, but we're going to stop here and we're going to have 15 minutes for conversation in groups with the questions that I wanted to wrestle with. What God has to do with hope? What would change if we go from hope to courage? What are the changes in my community to help us live with courage? How can we start living with the law of the land in our patch of the land? I'm going to post it here so you can have it. Or you can go off of that. It's just to start the conversation. And then we come back. 15 minutes, and somebody here at the group will divide you in groups. Thank you. And she has now, I came back to visit her, and I'm gonna show you a video of her singing to the plants. And so she's expanding my community of life. And here's what she did when first day that I was here in the morning. I'm just gonna share it quickly. So I got her in the morning, and here's what she was doing. Singing a hymn to the plants.
Mãe, quem que são essa?
I'm asking, are you singing to her? And then she goes back to singing again. I have to sing to their lives, about their lives. Look how beautiful they are.
Que lindo, mãe. E quem que é essa daqui, ó?
And who are these plants? Who, not what it is. Look how beautiful she is that I have. Imagine when she flourishes. She will fill my heart with joy, with colors and textures for its beauty, and I'll be much happier with her here.
Quem são mais as amiguinhas?
Look at this flower. And here's my violet. Look how beautiful they are.
Que linda, né, mãe?
Look at those, look at them. The one who died is outside, but look at it. One more beautiful. This one here is naughty because he doesn't want to give flower, but she will do it. She will give flower. She's the son of the other. The mother is not giving flowers, but she will. So you sing to them. But look, isn't that beautiful? Look at that. My mom told me that if I stick to all the beings around me, I don't need to fear. But I need to start to have courage to sing to the plants, to listen to the birds, to listen to all the patch of land around me. Then I won't be alone. And as long as I have somebody to pray with me, I don't fear the end of the church. We will continue with courage every morning. Thank you, friends, for this enormous gift to be with you. I'm so honored. On behalf of my mother, Nee, thank you.
Wow, Claudio, I have no words. It has been such a privilege to hear you speak. So it is with deep gratitude and thanks for joining us today and for your profound and challenging talk, to challenge us to move beyond frail hope to transformational courage, and for your calls for us all to act now with courage for our local and global community and for all of God's creation. As this is recorded, it will live on the Whova platform for 6 months, and it will be a resource for us as we look at how to act with courage moving forward. So it is with deep thanks and gratitude from myself and the United Church of Canada for joining us today. Thanks as well for everyone for joining us for this really wonderful session. We have more, including a workshop on hope led by Alexandra Belaski at 4:30 p.m. And we also have a wonderful worship at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, where we go through Stations of Hope with Reverend Dr. Roberts and Reverend Dr. Njiru, and music from Deborah Park and Fairview United Church, as well as U of T students. So please do join us for worship tonight. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Claudio.